In about mid-July, Broken Anvil Miniatures posted a competition on their Patreon. That competition was Paint Fight.
To win, you need to print, paint and build a diorama depicting a scene using the minis from their current release. In this case, The Legends of Daimor, which had Owlfolk and Ratfolk as their theme.
First prize is a Frozen Sonic Mini 4K resin printer, and since I already had 2 resin printers, this one would go to Elorix, should we win. We start by planning what to do, which minis to use and what scene to depict.
We thought of making a scene of the merchant dropping off supplies to a blacksmith, the kid approaching the old man, or mixing in minis from previous releases.
But after discussing these ideas, we came to a conclusion that we want to use the merchant and the wagon in some way. A scene began to form in our minds and we settled on these minis.
The guild merchant, the wagon, and also some boxes and barrels, the rat warrior, the wolverine rat, and the guts rat.
We made a stunning piece of art depicting our plans for the diorama and began to work.
Surlak prepared the 3D files to be printed, but before we could actually start printing them, we needed to do some repairs on the printer.
There had been a hole in the FEP film of the vat and resin had poured out onto the screen uncured. I scraped it up in frustration and managed to damage the screen, so I needed a new one. After ordering it and having to contact the company to get to know they currently had no screens, it arrived a few weeks later.
So we replaced the damaged screen with a new one and made sure it worked, after which Surlak started to print out our chosen models. This, however, was easier said than done.
Some leveling issues and problems with the new resin caused a few failed prints, but after re-leveling the build plate and mixing in some different brand resin, all printed well.
Now that we physically had our minis, we could start to plan more accurately of where everything should go.
First things first, we needed a tree for the gut rat to sit on. I started with a wire skeleton which I then covered in aluminium foil and then hot glue. I wasn't satisfied, so I tried some foam clay. Somewhat pleased with the outcome, I sanded in some grooves to look like bark, and like the idiot that I am, I tried to blow the dust away while wearing a respirator.
Surlak stippled some ground texture onto one of the sides of the tree to look like moss once it was painted. He used a dark brown color for the tree and various shades of green for the moss. And now it was time to paint our minis. So I started with the rat warrior, while Surlak painted the wagon and crates off screen.
Alex managed to paint almost entirely out of frame for the first painting session.
Sorry.
But after making this beautiful contraption and marking where the middle of the camera was, we managed to paint mostly in frame.
We wanted the rats to sort of blend into the shadows and backdrop, so they were painted in more darker colors, whilst the merchant was painted in bright, visible and vibrant colors to draw your eyes to him. And only after seeing him, that's when you notice the rats were about to jump him.
Minis now painted, it was time for terrain, and after bugging my dad for a piece of plywood, we got started on that. We noticed that the tree was a bit too tall, so we cut it down. Now more in line with what we envisioned, we glued the tree to the base.
To paint the ground, we used a dark brown color, to which we then added ground texture to be able to make the road. We then drove the wagon through the still wet ground texture to make it seem like carts and wagons had passed and left a trail in the mud. After that, we added some grass flocking to the side of the road for a little bit of extra decoration.
We needed a bush for the wolverine rat to stand behind, but we didn't really know how to make one. I got the idea to use some foam board and cover it in flock. By the way, Elrix hates the sound of this stuff being cut.
Ugh.
It's not perfect, but for how simple it was to make, and since it's a background item, I think it looks pretty okay.
We started to place out more of the models onto the diorama, and the scene started to take shape. And now came the question of the background. Our plan was for a full moon shining through the branches of a dense forest, with the silhouette of the gut rat sitting on a branch looking down onto the merchant. Problem was, we didn't really know how to do that.
I asked my sister if she would be interested in making a background for us, and she did. But it turned out too small, and the shadows of the wagon and trees showed up on it very prominently. Stuck once more on how we were to do the background, I noticed my fan in the background in one of our test photos, and I had a thought, why not make a bigger painting that's further away?
That idea actually solved one of our problems, because having the background be further back would actually cause it to have fewer noticeable shadows, and more of a landscape could be painted onto it. I took some A3 papers from my job and we taped them together, measured how big the moon had to be, and left it to Surlak's sister again.
After that was done, we needed a place to take the picture. We needed a dark room where we could hang the picture and place the diorama at the right height and distance from it. My pencil bedroom showed to be the best pick, and while taking the picture like this, we ended up with this.
So, how did we do?
Well, we won. Second place.
Silver medal!
Here we have first, second, and third place.
I didn't actually expect us to get top 3, and that's not to say that our work was bad or anything. I mean, we did actually come in second, so hey. But knowing the skill some of the people have when it comes to creating stuff like this, and this actually being our first time competing and submitting a mini diorama, honestly, I was just excited to be working with this with Sirlike, and seeing what our skill could bring together. Of course, I did hope we would get first place, but then that would have just been like sort of an extra bonus. So I'm actually super glad that in our first competition, we actually managed to get silver medal.
I'm not the type of person to really go for competitions very often. I think I've been in one before, actually. But this one actually intrigued me as a thing to do with Elric's. I had hoped for first place, mostly for Alex to get his very own printers. But even making it to the finals was a big shock for me. We did not have much time to create a diorama, since I did not want to work on it without Elric's, and he cannot come over every day to do so. This is the second ever mini structure I have made, and I'm excited to make more. I have plans to make display pieces for my 3D printed miniatures, and I really hope I will be able to make some videos on that. I do have a small pet peeve with the winner though, since his terrain was simply sticks that looked like he found them in his backyard. They didn't look painted or anything. I personally play hard by rules when it comes to these sort of things, so seeing someone just use sticks kind of felt cheap to me. Now don't get me wrong, his piece is awesome and deserves to win. I just personally think that using unpainted branches as trees in a do everything yourself kind of competition was taking the easy way. But Broken Anvil has the final say. Well, the only say, and I'm happy for him, and I really do hope that he puts that printer to good use.